Hello, good afternoon. It is still the 7th of December 2022 and it is a Friday evening now, and I'm reading out of Bliss, Afterlife, which is a story I started to write in 2006 and I finished it in 2017. Book 1, Bliss Afterlife, and I'm now well into the story and we are on chapter 92. This is a story about reincarnation. Chapter 92, Bliss. New Year's Eve we are. Bliss had been enjoying the New Year's Eve celebrations. It never failed to delight her that her name was still much mentioned. Although our earthly feelings and our bodies are different in the way we're feeling things in the ethereal, joy is felt in all the realms. As an observer, she could feel the happy vibration everybody enjoyed this evening, the ending of one year and the beginning of the next. Her presence was attracted a lot tonight, and she knew the way all were guided to enjoy the celebrations in the various family groups. It seemed all had followed their good wishes to have an enjoyable night of fun. Holly had finally voiced her intentions of taking the writings she had done more seriously. There had been much encouragement from this side of the realm to keep writing, and it had taken shape. Bliss had been in the hall of writers, and there was much hilarity, how they made sure she did not stop to spin. There are many interest groups in this realm, gatherings of souls who pursued an art which could be almost anything, painting, acting, music, homemaking, and so on. But the writers who gathered, for want of a better word, always fascinated Bliss. There you find the minds of Hemingway and Dickens, along with Einstein and Joan Grant, Asimov, and often writers humanity would not have even celebrated, or even heard about, long forgotten. All they had in common was that they all wrote when in their earthly incarnations. So much passion in this hall, as there was much respect for all writing. Much material coming from their incarnations, their emotional journeys, their desires, their fears, their triumphs, their losses, their dreams, all their imaginations made for vibrant energies, which Bliss frequently enjoyed. When incarnated in the physical, we often feel these inklings, the vibes, the muse. We give it words in our mind, the something, which sometimes makes us decide quickly, not a forcing. The free will of anyone is paramount, but inklings are part of feelings, and feelings connect us all. Despite all the technological advances on Earth, writing was still much appreciated and was a wonderful tool to spread imaginations, feeding the consciousness of the planet. All artistic endeavors of positive nature were feeding into the higher vibrations. The more scary, often intended for the emotional journey, with ever more perfected visualizations and imaginings brought to a screen, can awaken the senses and direct the emotional reactions. A good ending does wonders. Their feelings, their lives, and their manifestations in their lives are affected. If unawakened, the scary movie can turn into an unwanted reality, as the mind has been running away with the images. The connections in the mind processing the drama on the screen, feeling it as real. The fear, the terror, the hate, manifesting one's lives, and God is not responsible. Some have detached perspective, simply observing another's imagination. Fights, accidents, injustice, sadness, despair. Some take it in, connect to familiar experiences, running a program which feels real, more comfortable than breaking out. facing the law which matches the frequencies of our emotional journey, also on earth, sending free will haywire much of the time, manifestations by default, one could describe it. Service to others is much discussed in this realm. All groups are aware that Earth is going through a graduation of sorts. The best words to describe the vibrational changes. The Earth has moved into a different positive frequency, higher, and all conscious being on and in her will be shifting in time. A new cycle has begun. There's great awakening, and the year 2012 has marked the journey, with December the 21st being the end of a long cycle. Much of this has been talked about in many parts of the planet. No darkness came. Nothing much seemed to have happened, but changes move slowly, and realizations will blossom. Love is the key to everything. Bliss joined the lively hall of writers to discuss Holly's work. Chapter 93. Holly and Chris. Holly and Chris had taken a lift with Susan, who went back home to London 3 days after they'd had a fantastic New Year's Eve. The party had been so much fun, and David stayed on for a couple of days. Susan and he spent quite some time together, but it had been time to get back to some sort of normality, particularly for Holly, and it fit her nicely that Tony had given them tickets for a Christmas event. For Christmas. They were going to see the taiko drummers in Wimbledon and would stay in the refuge for a couple of days. They had spent the afternoon in and around Wimbledon and were in the foyer waiting to get in to see the performance. Holly felt a little tired. They had all got up early at Susan's, and Susan needed to sort rooms, and all sorts of work had to be done today, and Chris had suggested that they go out straight after arrival. They were without a car, and so had walked most day, with lunch in between. It had been a lovely day, and as both had lived in London, they always really enjoyed some time alone at their old stomping grounds. "Was that Steve?" Holly nudged Chris, standing on tiptoes, looking into the crowd. "I don't know. Do I? I've never met the bloke." Chris, still looking around, as he was sure he would recognize Steve. Photos and conversations had given him a picture. At least, he thought so. He caught a glimpse of a tall fellow with a tan, white temples, his arm around a tall brunette, and then they were gone. Maybe I did. If this was him, then he is with his girlfriend, as he had his arm around a beautiful brunette. Really? Beautiful? Did you see her face? Chris laughed. He loved that it piqued her that he was describing her as a beautiful brunette. He had actually only seen her hair and height, but something told him she was nice looking. "I'm joking," he hugged her. "No, you don't have to be joking. Sometimes I speak before I think. Why should she not be a beautiful brunette?" I assume she is nice looking. He certainly is. Sort of brown with sophisticated graying temples. Holly nudged him back and they laughed. "Yep, that sounds like Steve, although I thought he lived in Brighton. Anyhow, let's scour the crowd when we're seated. I'm so curious what he looks like now and how he is. Must be coming up for 12 years or so that I haven't seen him. He couldn't come to Mum's funeral, and he can't have been at Dad's, otherwise you would have known him already. I cannot really remember. Should that worry me? No, we set no numbers, and I think I stick with that from now on. Just vague is enough. Haven't seen Steve for a long time, that's for sure." I have to say, I would love to meet him. Chris showed their tickets, and they found their seats. Holly was already looking around, and it did not take long for her to point to the balcony across the other side. "There he is, and you're right. She does look nice." They seemed to be chatting away, very animated. Chris was laughing. That was so typical Holly, to make up things about this attractive lady. He felt both were now looking over, but the lights went dark and the audience hushed when the curtains opened, and they saw the beautiful, huge drums bathed in spotlight. Chapter 94, Bliss and Lydia. Lydia had been waiting at the favourite place for a meeting with Bliss, who was not long in joining her. She was settling into her female body, and a rest and connection with Bliss would be good. She already started to have the energies of a new young girl, no longer Alexei and no longer ethereal in spirit, but her body almost a fully formed baby girl. A few more weeks until she will be mature, although her birth a little earlier than all expected. I am enjoying growing my limbs. I can now put my thumb to my mouth. Lydia was already a sweet, cheerful girl, not even yet ready, but so eager to experience a physical body again. But it is getting awfully tight in there, she laughed. I can no longer do twirly-whirlies now. I'm glad to come here and stretch my limbs as far as I like. They both laughed, as there was no resistance to anything anywhere here. But their energies were clear, and they were aware of each other's presence and thoughts. You will be a very mixed, multinational little body, Bliss said, smiling. Your body is growing with you. The genetic raw material comes from pretty much all over the planet. You chose well. Will you look more Chinese or Indian? Will you be blonde or dark? Although blonde is unlikely, but also your body has a mind of its own. Together you will be Lydia. Lydia was last Alexei, Russian, and before that you were Irish. The spirit of a mix, too. You will be an interesting person, my dear Lydia, with a seed that will blossom. We are almost all everything, aren't we, Bliss? Lydia was returning to childlike innocence, her emotions starting to identify with the body, growing separately inside her mother. Well, yes, we are, Lydia. In fact, we are on some level all one, creator experiencing physical life on this beautiful planet called Earth. Why are you drawn to it, little one? You have the choice to incarnate elsewhere, somewhere with no struggles, which you will no doubt again encounter in your next life. Evolution is taking place nicely on Gaia. However, much is still out of kilter, and it might not be an easy life, although it will be what you make it. I know, Bliss. It is Gaia, though, who is calling me, and I know that you know that. Why are you making out this is new to you? I love the sea, and I love the mountains, and I love the food. I shall explore what my body likes, what makes it feel good. I want to eat green vegetables and fruit. There's so much variety of fruit. We have to make sure you keep this in mind. I've had a little similar conversation with you when you were this stage of a little boy. Some time ago now, at least in earthly years. Yes, you know that. If I was ever what you would call happy, it was in the woods beyond my parents' house. I used to roam around there, particularly after that whole incident with Father Paul. I felt so powerless, my parents being so angry with me that I should have suggested such a thing. I said little after that and never went back to church. Somehow my parents made no fuss about it. Well, looking back, I know suspicion rose over time. It took a few years, though. I remember he was gone one day. It was before I turned 10. I know that, as I did not want a party or anything, and our neighbours came in telling us that Father Paul had disappeared and they were interviewing a new person for the Easter Mass and so on. He had felt so relieved that he was gone, but it had never healed the wound of his parents doubting him. It had all felt so uncomfortable, even thinking about it, and he never went back to that wound, and his life changed, as the comfort they had always had sitting together after dinner somehow had disappeared. By the time I was 16, I had developed quite dangerous friendships. But I liked being hard and determined. I think I felt that I think I left that life truly behind me now. Lydia has a new start for learning. It was good to go through it all in my life review. I looked at Father Paul's path, and that was interesting. He has not incarnated back on earth. She smiled, and Bliss smiled with her. That life is behind you, and this will not be one of the things which stay with you in any shape or form. Your wish to help Gaia however will. Bliss was pleased how happy Lydia felt. I shall be glad the world has moved on from when I was there. Not so very much, dear one. There are still many asleep, distracted, hurt, angry, and what we would call a shift in consciousness will take time. But it has indeed shifted much already in the larger scheme of things. Bliss smiled again. There was much to study if one wanted to understand it all, even though one knew it all. Creator was an energy so powerful, we all have a piece of it. That's what makes us who we are, and Creator experiences all firsthand. It looks easy from here. It can be easy, but you can also make it as difficult as you like. Your start is excellent, and you are so right to begin it in a loving environment, couch remixed. Gaia needs brave little warrior girls growing up knowing changes have to occur in the world. She has changed much, our Gaia, over millennia, and we have to be the watchers and keep sending help. With ever more good, we shall serve God. Bliss smiled again. Do you think they just left the O out at some point? Oh, they left much out of the Bible, didn't they, my dear? The whole fact that you and I are here preparing you for your return shows that one of the most important written work known all over the planet, called the Bible, has no mention of what goes on in reality. They both laughed. The nature of reality has finally become a much more talked about subject on earth. Even though not so very many years have passed since you started the last time, much has shifted. When you were last born, there had been a world war only a decade or so before that, and in Russia the effects felt differently than, say, in Germany. There was a time of Cold War, and already when you were living that life, most helpers were coming into the planet in spreading a different idea of paradigm. We have now more wisdom on the planet than we've had for a long time, and we are moving into a new era and age. Many people are speaking out, but the world needs ever more speakers of the eternal truth. They are coming now, many tools in God's toolbox. These are exciting times. The obvious slavedom and times of brutal lawlessness has mostly passed on, but much dark still goes on, and much light is needed to balance Gaia and make her again the paradise she was meant to be, and will be again, with the help of helpers like you. They embraced metaphorically, and Lydia was gone back to grow. She now felt more right and tight than when she had left, but it was calm, and she heard beautiful music. All was well. This is chapter 94 and 95 to come, I think. Have a good day.